Welcome to the Pro Ticker Deep Dive.
It's great to be here.
Today is February 5th, 2026. And if you've been watching the news or honestly just looking at your bank account versus your grocery bill, you are probably feeling a severe case of economic whiplash.
It's a very strange moment.
It is. We are seeing these data points that suggest we are in some kind of booming, roaring 20s scenario, and then at the same time, data that looks like the floor is completely falling out.
It is the classic tale of two cities economy. I mean, depending on where you sit and specifically which income bracket you occupy, this is either the best of times or, the worst of times.
And that is exactly what we need to disentangle today. We aren't just looking at the headline GDP numbers because those are masking a massive, massive tug-of-war.
They really are.
We have the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the OBBA, which passed last year and it's finally hitting the ground now. And that is bringing massive cuts to the safety net.
Right.
But colliding with that is this delayed, kind of weirdly timed stimulus injection from tax refunds.
It's a chaotic mix of signals, really. You have fiscal contraction for the poor and fiscal expansion for the middle and upper class happening at the exact same moment.
So how do you even read that?
Well, it creates this noise in the data that makes it very hard to see the actual signal. It's almost designed to be confusing.
Okay, so to make sense of this, we are not going to start with the Federal Reserve. We are not going to start with the bond market. We're going to start with the burrito.
The Chipotle signal.
The Chipotle
Got
signal,
it.
exactly. Because for the last 20 years, Chipotle has been this burrito fortress. It felt like the unstoppable force of fast casual dining.
Oh, completely. Even when they had those food safety issues years and years ago, they bounced back almost instantly. The brand was Teflon.
But now, for the first time in 2 decades, we are seeing genuine cracks in that foundation.
And this matters. It matters because Chipotle is, I think, the perfect proxy for the American consumer.
The consumer with a little bit of cash?
Exactly. Specifically, the consumer who has some disposable income. The person willing to pay $15, $16, maybe even $17 for a lunch bowl.
Right.
If that consumer is pulling back, if that affordable luxury is suddenly not so affordable, it tells us something structural has shifted in the economy that goes way, way deeper than just wanting a cheaper taco.
So that's our entry point. Here is our roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to start with a macro picture. We have to unpack the OBBBA legislation. What is it really? What does it do?
Beyond the headlines, yeah.
Then we are going to walk up to what you're calling the cliff. We need to talk about the SNAP and Medicaid cuts that are kicking in, right now.
Their real-world impact.
Then we pivot to the weird stuff, the stimulus lag, and why your tax refund, of all things, is messing up all the economic data for the first quarter.
Which is a fascinating sort of data anomaly.
And finally, we're going to tear apart Chipotle's Q4 2025 financials and look at their, what seems to be, a Hail Mary play, agentic AI.
Which is a topic all on its own. The shift from chatbots to agents in retail is going to change how we buy everything.
Okay, let's get into it. Section 1, the macro policy landscape, the OBBBA. So this past July 4th, 2025, a very symbolic date for a very controversial bill.
Incredibly symbolic. And you have to remember the context. This was a reconciliation bill.
And for the listeners who might have forgotten their Civics 101, just remind us why the reconciliation part is so key here.
It is absolutely crucial. Reconciliation is a special legislative process in the Senate that allows a bill to pass with just a simple majority 51 votes instead of the usual 60 you need to break a filibuster.
So you don't need bipartisan support.
Not at all. But the catch is that everything in the bill has to be strictly budgetary. It has to be about taxes and spending. You can't just put random policy changes in there.
So no naming post offices, just hard dollars and cents.
Exactly. And the core architecture of the OBBA was a trade-off, a massive one. The stated goal was to fund significant tax cuts for corporations and for middle to upper income individuals.
But under the budget rules, you have to pay for that. Or at least you have to pretend to pay for it on paper.
You have to balance the ledger, right?
Yeah.
So to do that, the bill just slashes the social safety net.
We've seen cuts before, but the scale of this is different, isn't it? It feels different.
The scale is on another level. We are talking about nearly $200 billion cut from SNP. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what people used to call food stamps.
$200 billion.
And that's not even the big one. It's over $900 billion cut from Medicaid over the next decade.
So you're talking over $1 trillion in total safety net reductions.
We are. And that is why we are calling this an economic bifurcation. The government essentially made a decision to take liquidity away from the bottom 40% of the population and redistribute it through tax incentives to the corporate sector and the asset holding class.
It sounds like a reverse Robin Hood scenario when you put it like that, structurally speaking.
Well, if you just look at the flow of funds,
Yeah, sure.
yes, high-income households are seeing their stock portfolios rally because those corporate tax cuts increase earnings per share.
Right. They feel wealthier?
They feel wealthier. They're getting a bigger tax refund. Meanwhile, the bottom 40% are facing a literal hunger cliff. It is a K-shaped recovery on steroids.
Okay, let's zoom in on that cliff.
Yeah.
Section 2, you mentioned S&P. Feeding America put out a statistic that honestly just stopped me cold. They estimate these cuts take nearly 6 billion meals off the table annually.
6 billion. It's one of those numbers that's so big it almost loses meaning. It creates a sense of vertigo.
It's hard to even picture.
It is. But we need to look at the fine print of how they're getting these savings. It's not just that they lowered the budget top line. They went in and changed the eligibility rules in ways that are very specific and, frankly, very aggressive.
And the work requirements are the big headline here.
They are. Historically, we have had work requirements for what are called ABOBDs. That's able-bodied adults without dependents.
Basically, if you are healthy and you don't have kids, you have to work to get food aid.
Correct. That requirement used to stop at age 54. The OBBBA raised that age ceiling all the way to 64.
64. So picture a 62-year-old. Maybe he's worked manual labor his whole life, his back is shot, his knees are bad, but he's not technically disabled by the very strict Social Security definition.
Right.
Previously, he had a little bit of a bridge to get him to Medicare and Social Security.
Now he is in the labor pool. He has to log work hours to eat. And in a job market that is, as we'll discuss later, increasingly automated, well, finding a job for a 62-year-old with physical limitations is not easy.
But there is another change in there regarding parents that I think is even more impactful and a lot fewer people seem to be talking about.
You are talking about the age of the dependents. This is a massive shift.
Explain this.
Okay. So previously, if you were a parent with a child under 18 living at home, you were generally exempt from these strict time limits on benefits. The logic was pretty simple. Parenting is work, and younger children need supervision.
Makes sense.
The ABBB changed that age threshold from 18 all the way down to 14.
14. My nephew is 14. He's a great kid, but he can't drive. He can't legally work a real job. He still needs to be driven to soccer practice and, kept out of trouble.
Exactly. The legislative logic here is that a 14-year-old is independent enough that the parent should be in the workforce full-time, no questions asked. But think about a single mother with a 15-year-old.
Right.
Maybe she was working part-time or dealing with one of those unstable scheduling jobs where her hours change every week. Suddenly, she loses her exemption. If she can't secure and document stable full-time hours, the entire household loses its food assistance.
So we are forcing parents of high school freshmen to choose between supervising their kids and putting food on the table.
That is the practical reality of this change. Feeding America estimates this one rule puts hundreds of thousands of households into immediate food insecurity. And it's not just the recipients feeling the squeeze, it's the states themselves.
Right, the cost shifting. This is a bit wonky, but it is so important because it helps explain why your state taxes might go up soon.
It is very important. For decades, the administrative costs of running SNA, paying the caseworkers, running the ancient computer systems, were split 50-50. 50% federal, 50% state.
Partnership.
A partnership. But starting in October of this year, 2026, that split changes to 25-75. The states now have to pick up 75% of the tab.
And most state budgets are, by law, required to be balanced. They can't just print money like the federal government can.
Precisely. So if a state like Ohio or Florida suddenly has their administrative bill double or triple, they really only have two choices. Raise state taxes on everyone else or cut the program's overhead.
And what does cutting overhead look like?
It means closing offices, reducing hours, not upgrading the website. It means making it harder to apply. It is friction as a policy tool.
You make the line at the DMV look efficient to discourage people from even trying to apply.
And it gets worse. Starting in 2028, it gets even worse. States will have to pay a portion of the actual benefit costs themselves if their error rates are too high.
Now, error rate sounds like fraud.
It does, but that's misleading. Often it's just a simple paperwork mistake. A box wasn't checked, a pay stub was late. This new rule creates a direct financial incentive for states to kick people off the rolls for the slightest discrepancy, just to avoid those federal penalties.
That is going to lead to a very fragmented map, right? You'll have hunger havens and hunger deserts, depending on which state you happen to live in.
We are already seeing it. Some states are signaling they might just opt out of parts of the program entirely because they simply can't afford the new administrative burden.
There's one more detail in the S&P section I wanted to hit, the internet deduction. This one really feels like it was written by someone who has not looked for a job in the 21st century.
It is a prime example of what I'd call digital redlining. Here's how it works. When you apply for Senente, the government looks at your net income. To figure that out, you're allowed to deduct certain necessary expenses, like very high rent or utility bills.
To show that even if you made a certain amount, most of it was gone before you could even think about buying food.
Correct. It's about calculating your actual disposable income. Historically, internet service was often bundled into that utility deduction. The OBBA explicitly bans internet costs from being counted.
So the government is officially saying internet is a luxury. It's like cable TV.
In the year 2026, just think about that for a second. You need the internet to apply for the benefits in the first place. You need it to apply for the jobs they are now forcing you to get. You need it for your 14-year-old's homework so they can graduate.
It is a utility. It is as essential as water or electricity in the modern economy. There's no debate.
But the bill treats it like a Netflix subscription. And the impact is real. For about 13 million households, their countable income just artificially went up, which means their benefits go down.
By how much?
On average, it cuts about $10 a month from their food budget.
$10. You know, to a listener driving a Tesla, $10 is a latte and a scone. But for these families,
It's a carton of eggs, a gallon of milk, and maybe a loaf of bread. It is breakfast for a week for the kids. When you are operating at the absolute margins, $10 is huge.
and to cap off this whole bust side of the equation, we have the thrifty food plan freeze.
This is probably the wonkiest part, but financially it's the most damaging in the long term. The Thrifty Food Plan is the formula the USDA uses to decide how much money a SNP recipient actually gets.
It's the math behind the benefit amount.
Exactly. The OBBA mandates that any future updates to this plan must be cost neutral. They can only adjust for inflation.
What does that mean in practice? Let's say nutritional science discovers, hey, Americans are getting diabetes, they need to eat more fresh produce and less corn syrup. And fresh produce is more expensive.
The model cannot adjust to pay for it. The benefit amount can't be increased to cover the cost of a healthier diet. If a healthy diet becomes more expensive relative to a junk food diet, the benefit will no longer cover a healthy diet.
So it effectively locks the poor into cheaper processed calories forever.
It shrinks the real value, the nutritional value of the benefit every single year.
Wow. And we have not even really touched Medicaid yet.
We can do it quickly. $900 billion cut.
The same mechanisms.
Similar. There are new work requirements, 80 hours a month for ages 19 to 64. But the real killer here is the ban on something called provider taxes.
I have no idea what that is.
Most people don't. It's an inside baseball state budgeting trick. States often tax hospitals, take that tax money, use it to get a federal match, which is basically free money from D.C., and then they pay the hospitals back with higher Medicaid reimbursement rates. It is essentially a legal money laundering scheme that keeps safety net hospitals alive.
And the OBBEA bans it.
It phases it out. This blows a massive hole in state budgets across the country. The estimates are that over 8 million people will lose their health insurance by 2034 because states simply won't have the revenue to cover them anymore.
Okay. So that is the bust. That is the bottom dropping out for millions of people. If we only looked at that, you would think we were headed for a Great Depression.
You would.
But then we turn on CNBC and we see retail sales numbers bumping up. We see airlines are packed. Why? This brings us to Section 3, the stimulus lag.
This is the counterforce. This is why the data is so profoundly confusing right now. The OBBBA wasn't just cuts, it was also massive tax cuts. But there was a critical timing mismatch.
The bill passed in July of 2025.
Right. And the tax cuts were made retroactive to January 1st, 2025. But here's the thing about the IRS. They are, in many ways, running on computer systems from the 1970s. They could not update the withholding tables in time.
The withholding tables, that's the math that tells my employer how much to take out of my paycheck for taxes.
Exactly. They couldn't update them in time for the second half of the year.
So let me get this straight. For all of 2025, even though my taxes were technically lower on paper, My employer was still taking out the old, higher amount from my paycheck.
That is exactly what happened. You and millions of other Americans were giving the government an interest-free loan all year long.
And now,
Now, we are in early 2026. People are filing their 2025 taxes. And because they overpaid all last year, they are getting massive, massive refunds.
we are not talking about a couple $100 here and there.
No. The estimates we're seeing show an aggregate 44% increase in tax refund volume compared to the previous year. We are looking at something like $100 billion to $150 billion in cash hitting consumer bank accounts right now in Q1 and Q2.
That is a massive liquidity injection. I mean, that's a stimulus package in itself.
It's a fire hose of cash. And you have to remember, the psychology of a lump sum is completely different from a slow trickle. If you get an extra $50 in your paycheck every 2 weeks, you just absorb it. You buy slightly better coffee, maybe.
It disappears into the budget.
It does. But if you get a check for $3,000 all at once...
You buy a new TV, you book a cruise, you finally take the kids to Disney.
Exactly. It triggers big ticket spending, and that is why the data looks so strange. We are in the middle of a sugar high in consumption that is being driven entirely by these refunds.
And business has got a perk in this bill too, right?
A huge one. 100% expensing for R&D and capital equipment, also retroactive. So corporations are sitting on flush cash reserves, which is another reason the stock market is staying so elevated.
So this creates what you're calling economic confusion.
It does. The wealth effect is in full swing for the top half of the country. They see their 401k is up, they just got a big tax refund, they feel rich. They're the ones spending on experiences, travel, luxury goods.
But what about the low-income consumer? The one losing SNP benefits?
They get a refund too. But for them, it is not fun money. It is survival money. We're calling it pocketbook anxiety. They're using that lump sum to pay down the credit card debt they racked up buying groceries for the last 6 months.
Or to stockpile canned goods because they know their benefits just got cut.
Precisely. The money enters the economy, but it flows in completely different directions. One person buys a plane ticket to Paris, the other pays off a high-interest Visa bill.
And this brings us perfectly to our case study, Section 4, Chipotle. Because Chipotle sits right in the middle of this economic collision.
It is the perfect embodiment of this moment, the Chipotle signal.
They just released their Q4 2025 earnings. Walk us through the headline numbers. What did we see?
Well, on the surface, it looked okay. Revenue is up 4.9%.
And Wall Street likes revenue growth. It's a positive number.
Sure, but you have to peel the onion. That revenue growth was almost entirely driven by them opening 132 new restaurants. I mean, it is easy to grow revenue if you just build more stores.
Right. The truth serum of retail is comparable restaurant sales. Same-store sales. How is the store that has been open for 5 years actually doing?
And that was the shocker. Comps declined 1.7% for the full year, and they declined 2.5% in Q4.
For context, Chipotle is a machine. This doesn't happen to them. They have not had negative full-year comps in 20 years. Even during the 2008 global financial crisis, people were still buying burritos.
They were.
So why did it stop now?
Traffic is down. It is that simple. Fewer people are walking through the door. And management was surprisingly candid about this on our earnings call. They cited pricing fatigue.
I feel that in my bones. I went to Chipotle last week. I got a bowl, chips, and a drink. It was $22. I can remember clear as day when a burrito was $8.
And that's the thing. The gap between their menu price increases and general inflation has narrowed a bit, but the consumer is just tapped out. The cumulative effect of 3 years of constant price hikes has finally hit a brick wall.
So what did management say?
They admitted that the consumer landscape is, and this is a direct quote, fundamentally different than it was a year ago.
Fundamentally different. That is some heavy-duty CEO speak for, we don't know where all our customers went.
And specifically, it's the low-income customer that's gone. The college student, the hourly worker who used to treat themselves to Chipotle once a week, they have completely dropped out of the data set. They're bringing a sandwich from home now.
And if you dig into the margins, it gets even uglier. You found something about gift cards that was interesting.
This is a classic financial engineering nugget you find when you read the footnotes. Their restaurant-level margin was 23.4%, which is down significantly. But it would have been way, way worse without something called a gift card true-up.
Okay, explain that. What does that mean?
It is the accounting term for breakage. Basically, if you buy a $25 gift card for your cousin for Christmas and he loses it in a drawer or just never uses it, eventually the company gets to claim that cash as pure profit because they never had to actually provide the burrito.
So they just keep the money?
They keep the money. In Q4, Chipotle recognized a $27 million benefit from these old, unused gift cards.
So nearly $30 million of their reported profit wasn't from selling food at all. It was from people forgetting they had store credit.
Correct. It is a one-time accounting sugar hit. Without that, their margins would have looked terrifying. It masked the real damage that's coming from rising labor costs and, interestingly, from tariffs.
Tariffs. We know trade policy has been volatile. How does that hit a burrito company?
Avocados from Mexico, packaging from China, beef from other countries. Their cost of sales had a negative 30 basis point impact specifically from new tariffs. Global supply chains are getting more expensive and more complicated.
So management is looking at all this. They're looking at 2026. What are they telling investors? Are they panicking?
They are being very, very conservative. Their official guidance for this year is for flat comparable sales,
Flat after a decline.
which is basically them admitting to Wall Street, we do not expect the traffic to return this year. They are taking their medicine and resetting expectations. But here's the strategic pivot that is absolutely fascinating. Usually when traffic drops, what does a fast food or fast casual place do?
They flood the zone with coupons. Dollar menu. Buy one, get one free.
Exactly. They start a price war. Chipotle is doing the exact opposite. They explicitly said on their call, value as a price point is not a Chipotle strategy. They are refusing to discount.
That is a very risky game. If people are leaving because your price is too high and your response is to refuse to lower the price.
Then you have to increase the value of the experience. You have to find a way to make that $15 lunch feel worth it again. And this leads us directly to Section 5, the new recipe for growth.
If they won't lower the price, they have to lower their own costs to protect the margin.
Efficiency. The whole strategy is now a pivot to efficiency over volume. And the main tools they are using are automation and AI.
We have heard about the robots. I saw something called Autocado.
It sounds funny, but it is real money. They're rolling out what they call high-efficiency equipment to 2,000 restaurants. We're talking dual-sided grills that cook chicken in half the time, automated prep stations that chop onions and peppers perfectly every time.
Speed is value. If I am on my lunch break, waiting 15 minutes in a long line is a real cost to me. If that line moves twice as fast,
You are much more likely to come back. They claim their early tests show hundreds of basis points of sales improvement just from increasing throughput speed.
so just from being faster.
Just from being faster. But the more futuristic element, and the one that really caught my eye in their presentation, is their focus on agentic AI.
Agentic AI. We hear AI constantly. It's almost meaningless now. What makes this agentic?
This is the buzzword of 2026. We are moving from chatbot AI, where you, a human, ask a question and get an answer to, agentic AI, where the AI has agency. It takes autonomous action on its own to achieve a goal.
Okay, give me a concrete burrito example. How does that work?
All right, think about their loyalty program app on your phone. Right now, most of those apps are pretty dumb. They just send everyone the same generic email at 11:30 a.m. saying, come eat lunch.
It's basically spam, yeah.
Right. An agentic AI connects the customer data to the store's inventory data in real time. Let's say the AI notices that you, specifically, used to order the chicken al pastor every Tuesday, but you haven't been in for 3 months. It knows you're a lapsed customer.
Okay.
At the same time, the AI knows that this specific Chipotle store down the street from you has a surplus of chicken that needs to be cooked and sold before the lunch rush ends to avoid waste. The agentic AI autonomously decides to connect those two data points. It sends you and only you a dynamic, personalized offer.
Like what?
Hey, we miss you. Come in for your favorite chicken al pastor in the next 30 minutes and get a free drink on us.
So it's not a discount on the main item.
No. It is managing the supply chain and the marketing simultaneously without a human involved. It optimizes the margin in real time. It doesn't discount the food, which would hurt the brand's premium image. Instead, it throws in a very high-margin, cheap item, the soda, to trigger your visit and use up the excess chicken. It is hyper-personalization at scale.
So the goal is to make me feel special and seen, so I don't mind paying $15 for the bowl.
Correct. They are trying to extract the maximum possible value from their remaining customers, who tend to be the wealthier ones, rather than trying to chase back the poor customers who have already left.
And speaking of chasing the wealthy, they're also leaning really hard on LTOs. Limited time offers.
4 major launches are planned for 2026. This is very strategic. Their internal data shows that customers who show up specifically for a new novel item, like that smoked brisket they had, tend to be higher income. They crave novelty. The customer who just wants a cheap meal doesn't care about brisket. They want a simple bean burrito.
So by launching all these fancy new items, they are actively filtering their customer base. They're basically saying, we want the foodie, not just the hungry person.
They are explicitly targeting the top of the K-shape because they know the bottom of the K-shape is gone.
That brings us to Section 6, the broader consumer landscape. Winners and losers. If Chipotle is struggling to hold that middle ground, who is actually winning in this economy?
The winners are at the extremes. On the bottom end, you have deep value.
The discount rack stores.
Exactly. TJX companies, that's TJ Maxx and Marshall's, Ross stores, Ollie's Bargain Outlet. These stocks are hitting all-time highs right now.
Why is that?
It is the trade-down effect. As consumers realize their tax refund won't last forever, and those S&P cuts start to really bite, they move down the retail food chain, they stop buying clothes at the mall, and they start digging through the racks at Ross. It is the treasure hunt model, and it thrives in a bifurcated economy.
Okay, so that's the bottom. And the very top.
Well, luxury remains robust, but the real titans, the ones who are just immune, are the giants. Walmart and Amazon.
They seem to be immune to everything, always.
They are an elite of their own. Remember those tariffs we mentioned that hurt Chipotle's margins? Walmart has the scale to just absorb a 30 basis point hit like that. A smaller chain cannot.
And they have the money for the tech.
They have the capital to invest billions in the kind of agentic AI logistics we were just talking about. Walmart is currently winning the trade-down grocery war. If you can't afford Whole Foods anymore, and you can't even afford Kroger, you go to Walmart.
So the middle is the real danger zone.
The middle is the kill zone in 2026. Mid-tier dining. Other fast casual places like Sweet Green, Shake Shack, they are all feeling the squeeze.
Why them specifically?
Because they're too expensive for the S&P impacted poor, but they are facing intense competition for the wealthy who might just decide, you know what, if I'm going to spend $25 on a salad and a drink, I might as well go to a real sit-down restaurant with a waiter.
The value proposition just collapses in the middle.
It deliberately collapses.
You noted one wild card in the research. Housing. What's the thinking there?
Yes, the Federal Reserve is watching this K-shape develop too, and they're getting nervous. The expectation is they might have to cut interest rates pretty aggressively, maybe hitting the 3% range in 2026, just to try and stimulate the bottom end of the economy.
And if mortgage rates drop to 3%, people start buying houses again.
Or at least renovating the one they have. That would be a huge boon for Home Depot and Lowe's. Housing turnover drives a ton of retail spending. You buy a house, you buy paint, you buy a new rug, you buy a new fridge. But that is a very big if. It all depends on whether inflation really stays down.
So, Section 7, the so what. We have covered a lot of ground here. We've got legislation cliffs, tax refunds, burritos, robots. Connect all the dots for the listener. What is the big picture here?
The big picture is that 2026 is defined by a fundamental disconnect. You're going to see headlines this quarter and probably next quarter that show GDP growth.
And that's fueled by those one-time tax refunds and government deficit spending.
Exactly. The top-line numbers might look perfectly fine. You will see politicians go on TV and say the economy is strong. But the real economy for the bottom 40% of this country is effectively in a deep recession. It is a recession fueled by S&P cuts, by the loss of Medicaid, and by the cumulative weight of 3 years of inflation.
It is an invisible recession because it is happening to the people with the least political voice.
That is exactly right. And for investors or business owners listening to this, the takeaway is stark. You can no longer rely on a rising tide lifting all boats. The tide is actively going out for half the population.
So what is the new formula for success in this environment?
I think it comes down to 3 things: scale, tech, and positioning.
Okay, break that down.
You need scale to fight tariffs and absorb supply chain shocks like Walmart does. You need tech-specifically agentic AI to squeeze every last drop of efficiency out of your operations because you can't just raise prices on people anymore.
And positioning.
And positioning. You either have to be deep value, the absolute cheapest option, or premium experience, the absolute best, most desirable option.
And if you are in the middle?
If you are offering average products at average prices, you are the Chipotle of 2025. You are sitting there wondering where all your customers went. You are in the kill zone.
This has been Honestly, it's been a little sobering. It clarifies why everything feels so tense out there. We're watching a massive social and economic experiment play out in real time.
We really are. We are actively testing the hypothesis of what happens when you pull the rug out from under the bottom of society while simultaneously handing cash to the middle and the top. History would suggest that creates a lot of volatility.
Let's wrap this up. We started with the Chipotle signal. What is the final message it's sending us?
When the company that sells the quintessential affordable luxury lunch goes flat, it tells us that the core consumer is exhausted. It really is that simple.
And a final provocative thought for our listeners to take with them.
I want you to think about the AI piece of this. We are rushing headlong toward agentic AI as the savior of retail margins and efficiency. But I want you to ask yourself, is this technology actually improving the customer experience? Or is it just a very high-tech way to disguise a degradation of service and a reduction in labor?
Is the AI serving me, the customer, by making my life better? Or is it just replacing the cashier so the company can keep the extra margin for its shareholders?
That is the fundamental question. And my final piece of advice for anyone watching the economy this year: watch the traffic data. Ignore the sales revenue numbers. Sales can always be inflated by price hikes. Traffic tells you if people are actually showing up. That is where the truth lies in 2026.
Keep analyzing, keep questioning. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a pleasure.
We will see you next time. Goodbye.